Welcome in, guys, to another episode of On the Mark with Denmark on this Saturday morning, October 2nd, and we finally have a full slate of college football games. Just making sure we are subscribing to the YouTube channel On the Mark with Denmark. That will drop the description in the link below. But let's get to it. We got Georgia, Arkansas noon, Bama-Ole Miss at 3:30, Florida, Kentucky at 6, LSU, Auburn at 9. Sprinkle in a couple of other good games with Notre Dame and Cincinnati. There's also Oklahoma State, Baylor, Oregon. They play a game against Stanford. But I'm going to focus in on the three big games that everybody's talking about: Florida, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Georgia and Arkansas. And the gap between Bama, Georgia, and the field. There are a lot of people today that are discussing, Bama, they possibly. They're beatable. I know Chris Doering, he said Ole Miss can beat Alabama. There's a lot of people that think Ole Miss can keep up with Alabama just from the perspective of Ole Miss scoring more points than Alabama. And I don't think that's how it's going to go. Bama's a 14-point favorite right now. Georgia and Arkansas. Georgia's an 18-point favorite, and those are the two big games. And I think those two teams, the favorites, Georgia and Bama, roll. And I don't think it's going to be a close game either in the fourth quarter if I had to put my money down on it. And it's really started with last night. Last night, I think, was a preview of what we're going to see today. Iowa goes on the road to Maryland. Iowa's a 3-point favorite. And there are a lot of people that said, watch out for Maryland Friday night. It could be an upset. Tua's little brother, Tagovailoa Tualia, throws 5 interceptions. The backup quarterback throws 1. That's a total of 6 turnovers. And Iowa won that game going away. I think the final score was like 51-14. It was just a blowout. And I think that is a preview of what's going to happen today. A lot of people talking about Bama and Ole Miss. I think Bama is going to do what pretty much they did to Florida, get ahead early. I think Ole Miss will hang with them in the first half, but I think Bama's going to roll, and then it won't be a game in the fourth quarter. Same with Georgia, Arkansas, and the same with Florida, Kentucky. But this Bama-Ole Miss game, people keep going back to Florida and Alabama and what Florida was able to do from the second quarter on, what Florida and Dan Mullen were able to do with running the football, what Florida and Dan Mullen were able to do being creative. Alabama's defense didn't look good. They don't look as good as they have been in the past. They definitely don't look as good as they were last year. But a lot of people are saying that as a negative, and I think that's probably one of the best things that could have happened to Alabama in that game. You saw all their flaws. Nick Saban and coaching staff, Bill O'Brien, Doug Marrone and company can change personnel. They had their game last week, and then you have the big game today against Ole Miss. So I'm not expecting much. I might eat my own words and say, I was wrong, but we shall see. Let's see. There's another game that I wanted to talk about. The Florida Kentucky game. I think the spread right now is like 7.5. I think Florida wins this game. I won't say easily, but I think they go away in the second half. I think Florida's game is going to be just like they did in their first 4 games. It'll be a slow start. Emory Jones has been playing well the last 7 quarters after that first quarter against Alabama. But I think Florida will be able to run the ball like they have been. Anthony Richardson is expected to play. Dan Mullen said he's 100%. Florida gets all of their linemen back: Stuart Reese, Gene DeLance, all those guys come back that didn't play last week. Elam, the DB, didn't play last week either. He plays today, is expected to. And Florida, if you look at their first 4 games, slow start, run the football, close. It's a close score at the half, and then Florida runs the ball effectively in the second half. You saw that against Alabama. You saw that really against Tennessee. It was a 3-point game at half, and then Florida goes away to win the game pretty big by 24 points. I think the final score was 38-14. I think that's what happens today against Kentucky. Florida's a 7.5-point favorite. I would definitely take Florida minus 7.5. I think the line started at 9. And Kentucky's a team that has struggled offensively. The first game against Louisiana Monroe, The quarterback throws for 400 yards. The Penn State transfer, I think his name is Will Levis. And people are like, oh, Kentucky's maybe they're able to throw the ball this season. And then ever since then, it's been a trickle-down effect. They beat Missouri by 7, which was a good win. And then they beat Tennessee Chattanooga by 5 2 weeks ago. And then they beat South Carolina last week by 6. And they lost the turnover margin by 3. So South Carolina had 3. South Carolina was +3 on the turnover margin, and Kentucky still found a way to win that game 16-10. I think the only intrigue in this game will be how Emory Jones and Florida's offense will react to finally being on the road for the first time. I know Florida had a road game against South Florida, but that was in Tampa. That's one of Florida, if not the biggest fan base, if you look at per city outside of Gainesville in the state of Florida. So true road test. It's the Super Bowl for Kentucky. It's always the biggest game for them, especially when we go on the road over there for Florida. And it's been a really good game the last couple of years outside of last year. If you remember the last time Florida went to Kentucky, it was the game Felipe Franks got hurt. Kyle Trask comes in, and then Kyle Trask goes on to what he did in 2019 and the last year in 2020. But I think it's going to be I think Florida's going to take care of business. Georgia takes care of business. Alabama takes care of business. I don't think any of these games will be a fourth quarter game. The only game of intrigue that I think that'll be close, and I have no idea how it goes, and it's a coin flip, I think it's going to be LSU-Auburn. Neither team really knows what they are. Neither line is good. Bo Nix, is he going to play? That's a huge question. It looks like Bo Nix is the quarterback that can keep you in a game but he's not going to win you a game. LSU, last I saw, was a 3.5-point favorite. LSU's the home team. I think LSU wins this game. But it'll be interesting to see if LSU does not win this game, what does Coach Orgeron's status look like? He threw up a dud against UCLA, and he hasn't been. They haven't been as good as people have thought coming into the season. Some people had them winning the West. Some people had them a step below Alabama, but it definitely hasn't looked that way so far this season. So I think LSU wins. I think Florida covers easily against Kentucky. I think Georgia and Alabama win convincingly. And neither of those 3 games, the Florida, Georgia, Bama game, I don't think those games are our game in the fourth quarter. I want to speak a moment and talk about Georgia and Alabama and the gap between the two and then the field. We saw a preview of it last night. Iowa wins big. They were a 3-point favorite going on the road, and they wiped the floor against Maryland. If you pay attention to the Vegas odds in for the national championship, it's a what you call a futures bet. Bama, last I saw, was +175. Georgia was +225. The third is Ohio State, and they're +1,000. So you go +175, +225, and then +1,000 at third. That's a huge gap. Vegas is basically telling you Bama and Georgia are the go-away favorites to win the national title. And obviously they'll play if the two win out because they'll ultimately have to play in Atlanta for the SEC championship. But I think that's pretty shocking and pretty glaring, considering that most people today, if you ask fans around the world of college football, the 2 biggest games will be Georgia-Arkansas, Bama-Ole Miss, and they're double-digit favorites. And those two, a lot of those fans think those will be the 2 biggest games, and I don't think it'll be the way. And I think Florida, Georgia, and Alabama all take care of business. If you missed any of the show today, make sure you archive it on the Mark with Denmark on the YouTube channel, and make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel as I'll post content throughout the week, and I'll post all of the Baldwin football games. We took a tough one last night against Episcopal, lost on the last play of the game, 20-14, but it's only week 6. We're 3-1, and we'll get back on the road Friday night. I am Denmark, your host with On the Mark with Denmark. Thank you guys for watching, and enjoy your college football Saturday.